I want to talk about today's sponsor, World Anvil. World Anvil is an online interactive campaign and world builder. You can organize your maps, nodes, NPCs, and so much more. You can even use their new whiteboard feature for all your rough ideas. Check them out and use code DD8 to get 40% off a 12-month subscription. Enjoy the video. And we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our Interviewing Paizo staff series. I am your host, James. As always, I am joined by my co-host, Barat.
Hey.
And with us, Tylen.
And sometimes there's me. Hi, I'm Tylen. My pronouns are also he, they.
And joining us today is Eleanor Ferron from Paizo.
Hi, I'm Eleanor Ferron, as just stated, and I am a senior developer on the Pathfinder Lost Omens line. Pronouns she, her.
Awesome. So let's start us off with a nice, easy question. What got you into the TTRPG industry?
The industry, I tried to apply for a Paizo developer opening that I wasn't really qualified for because getting into the TTRPG industry is one of those things where it's easier than you think, but only if you know how. But I applied. I didn't get it. The editor at the time, Wes Snyder, said that he'd be interested in having me do some freelance work for Paizo based on the writing samples that I sent. So that took a while because all of these books are done so far in advance that you never know when or where any opening will actually show up. But I did eventually get a chance to write for it, and they liked me enough to call me back. So I freelanced for about 3 years, I think, and then the next time that Paizo was doing a hiring round, I applied again and got in.
So, how did you specifically wind up becoming drawn into into writing for the Lost Omens setting?
I mean, the setting lore is generally what interests me the most. And when I was hired, I was asked on whether I'd want to go on. Shoot, I forgot. I think it was Adventure Paths or no, it was organized play. That's right. Or to do these. At the time, they were called campaign setting and player companion books. They were these short 32 or 64-page floppy books that would come out monthly. And since the setting interested me more, I asked to go on that line with Luis Loza, who was hired around the same time.
Oh, nice.
And then when we went to second edition, it was sort of decided at the top that we were going to combine those two, the campaign setting and the player companions, into the big Lost Omen books that you have today.
So you and Luis Loza have been partners in crime for quite some time now, then.
Yep. I've seen an author say that, if you find somebody you collaborate with well, as an author or a creative, you sort of cling to them and you don't let go. And Luis and I work together exceptionally well. So, I've just been enjoying my time working with him on the Lost Omens line, and hopefully we can keep things together for a little while yet.
What would you say like your normal day-to-day routine would look like?
So the thing about these books is they happen in like sort of a long process. And they sometimes overlap, so it might be that I have to work on, outlining one and reviewing another and that sort of thing. But generally, when we start a book up, first we have to decide on what the book is, which generally takes a lot of meetings. Once that's settled, we have to outline what we want in that book. That's where we put together, the overall structure, what kind of things we want, rules, setting, the exact page to page layout of what we want in that whole book. Then we contact our freelancers and see who's interested in taking assignments for that sort of thing. Once the freelancers are assigned. We need to get them business contracts, the sort of administrative things, get them reference books, answer any questions they might have. Um, we have a milestone turnover where they give us half of their word count halfway through, and we can check and make sure that everything is about where we want it to be. Nobody's gone off in a weird direction on a side tangent about the earwax of bronze dragons or something like that. And we can course correct if anything like that happens.
It's very valuable, by the way. Thousands of gold.
I mean, you never know. I mean, whale vomit doesn't sound like it ought to be valuable, but it very much is. Yeah,
Omens, Guide to Anatomy.
Gonna look
there
that
are
up.
people who want that. There are people who want to know how to chop shop their murdered monsters into the most valuable pieces and what they can do with it. But
My God, the
usually
whale
that's
thing is
not
right.
the topic that we're writing on, so we have to sort of tell them to go back the other way on that sort of thing. And then we get the final turnovers. It's our job to edit it, smooth out any rough bits, make sure that a lot of the run-on sentences are chopped down to size, even though a bunch of them still creep through into the final project, because we're all guilty of it. We're everyone, no one here was without sin. Um,
I am addicted to
And-
commas.
we actually have a principle that you may not have more than one M dash in a single paragraph. We had to put limits on those. We also, when we are developing it, we have to make sure everything lines up with everything else in the book. One author might write, this is a horrible place that is filled with evil bed bugs, and somebody else might write, this is a wonderful place that is filled with leprechauns and gold, and then we have to reconcile those two facts together and pick what we're going to go with. And once that's done, we turn the text over to edit, so they can continue making it more readable, fixing any typos, general sensitivity checks, and that sort of thing. We have to write the art orders for the book after that, which is, telling the art department what we want illustrated, and then they go out and take our descriptions and hire the artists to put that in. And we also have a sort of a sketch phase where we check the sketches, make sure that the artist didn't fly off somewhere into the distance that we don't want. And then once all that's finished, the art department puts it all together in layout, which is where we have all the pages and art and final book PDF basically all laid out. We go over it one more time and copy fit it, which is making everything fit all into the book pages like they're supposed to. That sometimes means cutting out huge chunks of stuff, which always makes us sad. That sometimes means adding a whole bunch of stuff, which also makes us very sad. Doing any art tweaks, changing headings, that sort of thing. Putting captions on images if we feel they need them. And then it goes into final checks and out to the printers. So at any one point in a day, we're doing something along those lines. There are sometimes exceptions like meetings on weird things or special one-off scheduled things at the company, but usually we're doing something along that book process.
Book of the Dead dropping a few weeks from now, as well as the Knights of Last Wall Lost Omens setting. What can you tell us about Knights of Last Wall book and what we can start seeing from there?
So it's basically, consider it like a mini campaign setting on the Gravelands, and in fact, we're going to put in a gazetteer of the Gravelands as a whole, and just generally the area around it, because it's sort of like almost a different world than the rest of Galarian, much like how the World Wound was just this awful mess of boiling lava and demons everywhere in first edition. Well, they closed that down, and then Tarbafon sort of mucked up a different spot in the world. And so it definitely feels very different because you're not really going to have your high noble intrigue in the middle of a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah,
Not that
it's
people. I mean, you could. The Pride and Prejudice in Zombies was a book. You could do
oh,
that. I'm not stopping
just
you. But
just like in
we
that
didn't-
book, just a zombie apocalypse plops straight into something that you wouldn't expect a zombie apocalypse to be in. In this case, a high fantasy world.
yeah, I will not stop you from running your romantic comedy in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. You are absolutely free to do that. But
Okay.
that's not the focus of the Knights of Lastwell book. It sort of presents the campaign setting and presents the major actors on the heroic side, which would be the current knights and any allies they have, like the Magambia and some of the Fae from the Fangwind Forest, Nermathis, even some of the hobgoblins from Oprok, because they really like tromping around and beating things up. And so you have a few people who don't care for peacetime that much and are just gonna go out and stomp on some undead. And we're gonna have some interesting rules options, like expanding on the medic archetype or the martial archetype, more feats for that sort of thing to excite the rules expansions for the Knights of Lastwald archetypes, which I'm sure some people would enjoy, to can make that sort of thing more robust and attractive to players. And then just sort of describe, what's it like to join up with the Knights of Lastwell? What's your everyday life look like? What do the prominent two factions in the Knights of Lastwell look like? To sort of have somebody decide which one they want to pick. Prominent members with pictures of them, so you can say like, oh, here's your commander, it's this person, here's their picture, and the sort of rundown of who they are as an NPC. And so you can have these prominent characters sort of carried across various campaign settings, but you can make the campaign your own.
Now that we're getting down to like the nitty gritty of specific locations in the setting, I was actually wondering what your personal favorite place is in the setting, either to work on or just in general.
It's a rude question.
Oh, I know it's hard to pick favorites. It's like picking your favorite child.
Pretty much.
It's Numeria. It's easily Numeria. I don't care.
It's
love Numeria,
but there's so much cool stuff in the lore.
I do like Numeria, but you can always cross your fingers that Owlcat will do Iron Gods as their next game. I think I would say Vidrian, just because it's in such a state of flux.
I love Vidrian. I love. That's my favorite as well.
I mean, it's got so much ripe potential. It's basically the perfect adventuring spot, because you've thrown off this tyrannical government, but at the moment everything's so up in the air and so uncertain, and you don't know what direction it's going to go. And there's so much room for heroism, but also so much confusion of what should we be doing, and what is the right path for us to take, and how long can this last without us making decisions as a country that we don't necessarily want to make.
This might be limited by NDA, and if it is, you can just tell us to shut up. Where do you see Pathfinder as a whole going forwards from here?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure if I can say anything. Definitely, we have some exciting things planned over in Lost Omens, and I know of some things over in design, but I can't tell you about any of them.
Just a reminder, the legal team is listening and they are taking note.
Oh man.
So how do you manage to balance working on Pathfinder and or the working in Paizo with also playing TTRPGs as a whole in your free time?
I think if you ask most Paizo people, they'll say that nobody has time to play RPGs when working on
Oh,
RPGs. But I do have a group, not Pathfinder actually, Starfinder. I do have a group with Ron and a few other coworkers and Ron's wife Stephanie. To every other Thursday, so not quite long enough for us to forget everything. So we just sort of it's not so often that it gets overwhelming, but we can keep some time in the schedule for that.
So you've said that you like to like work on paper minis in the time that you do have off. What's that like?
Uh, very odd. uh, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. Mine don't get a whole lot of attention because I'm very new to it. I personally enjoy looking at Trash Mob minis. They show up on um, Drive Through RPG, maybe some other places. Definitely their Patreon. Um, but sometimes they get a lot of attention, especially if it's a very popular character. Sometimes it's just basically nothing. I would not go into it for the money. I just like to draw them from time to time because I really like them as a concept, and I'd like to see more things contributed to it. I like how clear they are. As opposed, I have nothing against plastic minis. In fact, aside from the fact that they're harder to store and nobody has any space. But yeah, I feel like the paper ones can show more character because they have more liberties. They don't have to easily be 3D printed or sculpted or that sort of thing. They can be more stylized so you can see facial expressions or details a little more clearly. Um, the thing
uh,
I like about paper minis, aside from the way you can stylize them is great,
you
but
could
also
just
you
print
can
them
just
out.
shove them into a folder
Yeah, you
and
can just
take
print them
them
out,
to
shove
your
them into a
game.
folder.
I
And
feel
and also, if you need more than one zombie or whatever, you just like copy paste them into a
Yeah.
different document and print out entire sheets of them. You don't have to buy a case and hope you get enough zombies for a good decent mob.
Yeah. Here's one that I've been wanting to ask about specifically because of one NPC that everybody knows and loves.
Uh-oh.
But the question won't be exactly about them. Who has been your favorite NPC to work on? And
Ah.
right here in our notes is you get bonus points if it's Anchor Root because everybody loves Anchor Root. I mean,
It's tough to say I enjoyed working on Anchor Root because Anchor Root was me when I was in school and very desperately unmedicated and
oh,
undiagnosed. And so I'm glad that people love her, but at the same time, when you lie awake in bed and think about something very awful
cringy.
that happened to you when you were in middle school, like it's kind of funny though because like having experienced it, that people like Anchor Root are not as fun and cute in real life, because when you have to try and stop somebody from stress vomiting over basically nothing like 4 times a week, it gets old. I'm just gonna be
Uh,
brutally honest here. It gets a little old. Speaking as the person who sometimes was doing the stress vomiting.
ouch.
But yeah, she's crazy popular, and I'm glad that people like her so much. Who's my favorite to have worked on? I'm going back and
Similar question to before. It's hard to pick between what is basically your own kids.
at this point, like it's just trying to remember who I even wrote. I did enjoy working on all of the Strength of Thousands students and teachers. And I guess I'm gonna have to stick with that because everything else I wrote was years ago, and I'm trying desperately to remember. The other maybe Strawberry Machine Cake the band, just because it's
Yes.
a giant over the top satire, but also love letter to the 90s J-pop bands that
Oh my god.
were
But in
part of my
space.
teenage years. So, but in space, yeah, and as holograms.
That does it for today's episode of Professional Idiocy. I have been your host, James. I'm joined by Barat, Tylen, and our lovely guest, Eleanor Ferron. I hope to see you in the next interview. Goodbye.